I think the massive thing I got from the Crusaders was I needed to taste it. I needed that confidence to be, for me, there comes, I suppose, in all of us, something that have to convince, because as you know, life is probably, it's you against you, getting the best out of yourself. So how do you do that? And because of my background and because of coaches and because of maybe the time I played the game in Ireland, the All Blacks were growing up, were made out to be guys that were the best ever and untouchable, and we're lucky to take the pitch with these guys. Nonsense. But unfortunately, if that's your mindset and that's what's been hammered into you from a young age, you'll always feel a little bit inferior. But now, thankfully, I don't. And I feel on a level playing pitch. I know what their weaknesses are. I know what their strengths are. And I suppose, have a great sense of contentment with having, not talking with a big head, probably earning their respect. And that's important too, because, the great thing about the rugby world, it's small and they all talk and they'll know whether you did a good job. But I'm really connected to so many of their players now that I felt like I was there for way longer than 2 years. And I think that's hopefully a compliment to both of us.
You spent a lot of your career both playing and obviously coaching in France, but what, you were clearly happy and content over there, but what spurred on the move back to France?
I think opportunity, and the fact that I love coaching both sides of the ball. I don't know, do I prefer, being an attack coach or defence coach? In La Rochelle, I get the opportunity to do both. So that really, really makes me feel great. I love it because, I was an average tackler, but I think I was a good defender in the fact that I know what opposition out halves like and don't like. So I apply that to everything I do. So I set up teams with, for the example of I give would be Bowden Barrett. If you give him time, he'll rip you apart. You can't give Bowden Barrett time. So the key is, if you got to double mark him, triple mark him. But for me, I always felt like when the ball isn't in Bowden Barrett's hands, my team has a better chance. My team, i.e. Razor's team, has a better chance of performing. So you got to be smart about how you do that. But if we always think the same about certain things, we'll always get what we always got, which is the definition of insanity. From that regard, it was to go back there was to, so I could continue not being put into a box of being responsible for this, because I love big picture too. I love the connection. I love the empathy with the players. I love knowing how they feel. That for me is what sport is about. We're not pushing robots around the place. You know what I mean? We all have bad days. You feel some days the game is so simple. You look at the example of, goal kicking or doing any skill. You can be doing the exact same technique and with your eyes closed, you can kick the ball over. Then there's other days, a penalty on a 15-metre line on the 22, you're like, oh God, this post looks so small today. What's going on here, So it's about, I suppose, creating an environment where you give your players the best chance to succeed. Because in my time in Munster, I was made feel 10 foot tall by certain coaches. Other coaches probably squeezed me, and then you get that experience with going on Lions tours where you come across the best players and the best coaches, and you take a little bit from everyone. And now it's your time to have a go at it.
Last week you spoke about that, that I suppose the exact same position James Gibson Park was in, and James Lowe was in that position last week, and like you have to make a decision as a defender. You're either going man and ball, or you're bowing out of it and you're just waiting for it. And I suppose that decision, it didn't work out well again today. But James Lowe, we spoke about last week, he actually had 7 attempted tackles and 4 missed. Like, that's not a good enough stat as a winger. You need, especially when tries are scored down your wing.
Yeah, he probably wouldn't be proud of that stat. He brings so much to the team in attack, and his kicking today is such a huge weapon. I think I said that the last day, like he must have one of the biggest left boots in the world, particularly after Rob Kearney leaving, having him in, and he can just relieve that pressure. So some of his kicking was great, but yeah, it's difficult on the edge at test level. You can get exposed. I mean, I've been exposed, plenty of times at that level when you miss a tackle and you might only have 3 to make, but you miss an important one. It's for a try, whereas people forget that in and around the ruck, from like the first defender to the fifth, the spaces are so tight. If someone misses someone in there, a prop or a lock, they'll get cleaned up by someone else. Whereas the guys on the edge, whether it's the 13, the 15 or the winger, you miss tackles there, there's going to be tries because guys are so quick and there's much more space to run into. So, yeah, I mean, I think he'll probably look back at the clip of, James will probably look back at the clip of where Doolan steps in. Again, a very tough tackle for him. He's lunging there. His weight isn't underneath his feet, and he's just trying to grab him. He steps in and manages to flick it to Damien Penaud for that important try. So it's tough. I don't know exactly what the system is that Simon Easterby has them running, but it might just take a little bit more time for James to get used to it.
You spoke about the Italian game and going ahead. We have to look towards that Italian game. Who would you like to see involved or been given a chance in the next test game?
That's a difficult question too. I think I thought Gibson Park did very well today in terms of tempo, and particularly even when the game was in the melting pot at the end. You know, he had a couple of fantastic catches, a couple of offloads and stuff. So I thought he was lively and he set a good pace. It'd be good to see Craig Casey get a taste as well. But I was impressed with Gibson Park. I think Byrne did well at 10 when he came on. Yeah. And probably like to see the likes of maybe a Jack Carty or someone get an opportunity too. So those two guys probably, Jack Carty and Casey in at 9. Probably look at utilising someone else as a number 8 as an alternative to CJ. He's played a lot of minutes over the last few years. We know what he can do. Look, he's been a fantastic ball carrier, and he's going to be in our starting back row, probably at 8 or 6. But I'd like to see someone else given a chance at 8 against the Italians, just to see what other kind of balance we could have in the back row as well.
What about you, Ferg?
Yeah, I think you'd imagine he might cap a couple of those guys for the first time. That could be a good energy booster for the group, and those guys, you know, Craig Casey and Tom O'Toole would be two guys who could get an opportunity there. You know, I would like to see a couple of changes, but at the same time, because the first 2 matches, unintentionally for them, have been pretty disrupted, they probably want to keep a couple of the combinations as well. So I doubt they're going to ring in the changes because, you know, Italy made it quite tough for England actually in Twickenham for a lot of that match. Yeah. So, you know, I do think we'll beat them, but we don't want to take them for granted. We need to get a bonus point now. We need to beat them by as much as possible. So they'll still be picking a very strong side.
House of Rugby Ireland, here on Joe. Game changed.